So you've probably noticed the way that play and joy nourish you and your community and leave you connected in new ways, right? It's in your bones. You already know why we need something like deeper joy. You're probably already experiencing the longing or witnessing it in your communities, at least. Many of our communities took a big hit during the pandemic, especially the lockdown era. And in many ways, we're figuring out how to be together again. We need practice remembering how to stick to our agreements, how to say, oops, I made a mistake, and ouch, that hurt, and I'm sorry, I can do better. We need to practice how we make meaning together again, how we have compassion and grace for ourselves and one another through the ups and downs of community life. And at bare minimum, we need to remember how to play and have fun together so that the joy that we generate can resource us for the challenges we face. And it's not easy. Sometimes it's near impossible to stick together when our attention is being pulled in so many directions and our energy is being zapped by so many demands. And it's tempting to block or ghost someone when the going gets tough. And now, more than ever, we need to stick together to challenge the white supremacist, capitalist, colonial, cis heteropatriarchy, as Bell Hooks coined it, or American dreamism, as Mia Birdsong shortened it to. We need to stick together so we can co-create new life-affirming worlds, like Joanna Macy talks about. So that's why Deeper Joy exists. We need practical ways to thicken our connections for when the going gets tough. We need concrete practices that help us access that sense of divinity in each of us, that aliveness, that depth, that joy that American dreamism strips us of. And as Audre Lorde points out, once we feel it and know it, out of self-respect, we can require no less of ourselves. When I look around from my vantage point, which is Unitarian Universalist religious education, as a youth ministry specialist for the national office for the last 10 years, I see a shining example of a vast and diverse community of people that have pulled this off for decades before everything shut down in 2020. This community, or really interlocking communities, are beginning to rebuild now. And it's the young people, it's high schoolers and young adults. In our movement, they have honed and passed down community building strategies that center inclusion and accessibility, meaning making, faith formation, and joy. Inherently multi-generational youth communities in Unitarian Universalism are full of adults who get it, as we say, meaning they have a playful heart and a strong sense of differentiation. And these communities are, of course, full of youth who are at once self-determined and acknowledge their interdependence. Youth communities in Unitarian Universalism are by nature leaderful environments. A generation of youth is only about 4 years long, so shared mentorship, leadership, and training are baked into the community design to ensure continuity and stability as young people grow out of age-based communities and into other communities within and beyond Unitarian Universalism. And maybe it's because of the developmental stage when friends and non-parental connections are like the most important thing ever. But youth communities in UUism are unparalleled in their dedication to covenant, right relations, repair, and community safety. And aren't these things exactly what we yearn for in our wider communities as well? So in the late 90s and early 2000s, UU Youth created a compendium of community building and faith formation strategies that they employed, and they called it Deep Fun. So can you guess where I got the name Deeper Joy? So Deeper Joy is not necessarily new. It's building on this long legacy of youth culture and movement building in our faith. We've springboarded off of that deep fun resource in some meaningful ways. A lot of the games in that resource come from the folk sphere. Who knows when or by whom they were invented, but they've been passed down by oral tradition in performance and movement circles for generations. We've removed some of the games that would be hard to play and uphold our youth safety guidelines at the same time. And using the concept of universal design, we've adapted the directions for the games and activities we've drawn from Deep Fun to be the most inclusive form of the game possible, and provided variations for alternatives. And the most dramatic shift from Deep Fun to Deeper Joy is that we've organized the groupings of activities and games as a map instead of sequential stages. So Denny Ryberg's 5 stages of community building were the pillars of Deep Fun, and they are bonding, opening up, stretching, affirming, and deeper sharing. And we've blended Ryberg's 5 stages with a number of other community building models and added points on this community building map about healing, covenant, and exclusivity. And when we facilitate events on Deeper Joy, we invite participants to come up with new landmarks they would add, like ritual, solitude, boundaries. Actually, we've done away with the idea of stages altogether, and instead we're thinking about the features of community. Based on what the group experiences together, there will be a certain quality or condition or feature that the community will embody. So a sense of being bonded, of being willing to take risks together, or being adept at affirming each other's gifts and talents. So a leader or facilitator has a number of choices to make about what experiences they want to offer the group to shape those desired features. The community features are represented as landmarks or places on the community building map. So let's go over the different features on the community building map, and then I'll show you how to get from one feature to the other so that you can shape your deeply joyful community. All right, so this is the map of community building. And the land is green and brown, and the ocean is along the bottom. And at the very left in the middle is a green bay called Tepid Bay. Many groups find themselves swirling in these lukewarm waters. This is where members are non-committal because they don't feel like they matter to the group. Maybe the group is stuck here because a sense of safety has been broken, or it was never established in the first place. And the group might be stuck here because there's no sense of purpose or mission for group members to be committed to. In the lower right corner is the bonding harbor, where a river flows into the sea. The first step in community building is to identify some cohesiveness and a very low stakes sense of contributing to the collective. So this is where people ask, is it safe to let down my guard, even just a little? As a facilitator, you can lead the group in activities that offer very low stakes sense of contributing to the collective, and members get to experience cooperation and play. So the river that feeds the bonding harbor is labeled Stretching River. This is where we get out of our comfort zones and into the growth zone. Trials, problem-solving opportunities, and challenges can all bring the group closer together. When we're creating experiences that build the capacity of the group to do together that which we cannot do alone. To the left of the river is a small body of water labeled the Healing Springs. So when there's hurt or harm, the way that we show up for each other matters. Repair, amends, and recovery are all vital on the journey to deeper joy. And this is where we bolster our immunity and resilience to the ills of the world and take preventative measures. This is the space to love our whole selves and love ourselves whole. It's in the Healing Springs where there is rest and time for integrating life's lessons. So on the other side of the river is a bunch of trees labeled Forest of Affirmation. When we value others' experiences, witness their growth, and support them in their tender moments, our trustworthiness increases. These are the times where we offer gratitude for each other and the group, and we celebrate our differences and our gifts. Along the waterfront below is below the forest is the opening up beach with some unlabeled islands off the shore. So the opening up beach is where we share low risk or non-threatening stuff about ourselves and our lives. And when we feel like our shares are received, considered, valued, our sense of safety increases. On a point up from the opening up beach is the Covenant Lighthouse. Like a red and white striped beacon in rough waters, the agreements we make with one another guide our way. Covenants are our theology of messing up and repair in Unitarian Universalism. They are what we can refer back to when we get lost. Like a lighthouse, our covenants create the conditions for safety. Up in the right corner is a jagged edge labeled Cliffs of Exclusivity. So there are two sides to exclusivity. On the one hand, we want to watch out for the jagged borders that actively or inadvertently keep others out instead of drawing the circle wider. We must pay close attention to inclusivity and accessibility. But on the other hand, we must have what Priya Parker calls generous exclusion, where the guest list, if you will, is exclusive based on the purpose, the principles, or the values of the gathering or the community. In the middle of the top of the map are some canyons that the stretching river cuts through. They are labeled canyons of deeper sharing. With the right conditions and preparation, groups can support each other in the depths and the heights of their spiritual growth in ways that we cannot do on our own. When we say sharing, we may mean sharing stories about ourselves and sharing about our feelings and situations, or sharing experiences together, making shared memories and sharing moments of awe. Practicing continual active consent is at the heart of sharing. So those are the current features on our community building map to deeper joy. As you're moving your group through these points on the map, you as the facilitator get to decide where the group needs to go next. Did you just do something that stretched people outside of their comfort zones? You might choose to go to the Healing Springs next to do a nervous system regulation activity. Or you might take people to the Forest of Affirmation and pick an activity that can reassure people that the risk was worth taking. Now, if you find your group has slipped into the not good part of the Cliffs of Exclusivity, you may want to take them down the beach to the Covenant Lighthouse to remind them of their agreements of inclusivity. Or it might make more sense to go over to the Bonding Harbor to play some games that create more inclusive environments. You might even venture into the canyons of deeper sharing to find out why people are protecting themselves with exclusivity and how others feel being excluded. Only you as a facilitator will know what, as Adrienne Marie Brown says, is the next elegant move. So you can tell that this map is a resource, means that you're implementing a responsive, non-linear design to community building. This map and the practices it points to are not going to make a good 5-year plan, but it will make an excellent companion to you as you read the room or read the moment and discern where your people are now and where you or they want to go next. For example, if your anti-racism committee is starting a white identity learning group and you want to spark conversation about having grace for each other when we make mistakes, you can turn to the Forest of Affirmation page and look up the game Zip, Zap, Zop, Oops. And after playing that game together, you could guide a discussion on how it felt to not get it right all the time when we're in community. The map works great if you're one of the many facilitators or organizers who, because of trends not unique to UU programming, can't really know for sure who exactly is going to be in the room at any given gathering or what they might be carrying on their hearts on the day you meet, right? You may have a perfectly outlined plan for a session only to listen to the morning news that day and learn of a horrifying tragedy that directly or indirectly impacts your group members. Rather than canceling or trying to carry on with business as usual, you could turn to the activities in the Healing Springs and discern if a ritual of lament or writing personalized blessings made more sense for the group when you gather. You could choose to try on these activities from week to week or month to month as part of your regularly scheduled programming to cultivate the conditions or the features of commitment so that people understand themselves to be important to the community. And as they're driven by their connection, they may actually find it to be a joyful experience to say yes to that 6-week faith formation program or that second term on the board, for example. So it'd be nice if I could just give you a 5-minute facilitation crash course on how to implement this stuff in your context. But actually, you're already the expert on how this stuff might work for you and your community. So as you look through the sections, you can think aloud to yourself, I can imagine using this activity in this particular context. And if I use this game, I'd have to think about these particular members. And if you want to do that kind of discernment in a community with other leaders and educators and facilitators, I host open monthly studios where we get together to try this stuff on and workshop together how it could best be used in your context. So if you can't make it to an open studio or you want your whole group to get a feel for how to implement this stuff, you can schedule a studio with me at a time that works for you. And I can even give you the material for how to run the studio so you can do it yourself. I love these studios. We get to play games, for goodness sake. And there's usually someone who in the debrief says how reluctant they were to play and how happy they were that they did. But even more than I love to play, I love that we get to do our own meaning making and faith formation after we play. We practice somatics by paying attention to how it felt in our bodies to play the game. And we come up with all sorts of creative ways to use the game in our varied contexts. And we share other tips and tricks and tools and games that we know of. In my humble opinion, it's worth prioritizing. Okay, one last thing. I really do think that deeper joy is relevant to those who steward welcome committees or RE councils or are hosting multi-generational game nights, for example. The desire to belong is universal. People of all ages, from the youngest to our eldest, want to know that they matter and that their contribution is important. And if we have more deeply joyful adults in our communities, if we have adults who are willing to learn from the strategies our young people have honed on how to build community, I have a strong hunch that young people will be more likely to stay around when they transition from one life stage to another. It's a fairly common lament in UU circles that youth don't stick around in grown-up church because their youth experience is so different from the adult experience. And we've erroneously been saying that we have to acculturate young folks to grown-up church when really, to remain relevant, honestly, we need to be the kind of community that young persons will stick it out with. Okay, no, really, this is the last thing. I have another important mission with Deeper Joy, and that's to get these games, these strategies for inclusive culture building back into the hands of youth so that the resource can evolve yet again. That vital element of youth communities where the older youth pass down their knowledge to the younger youth, we lost that with the lockdown years. But with the support of playful and differentiated adults, like I mentioned earlier, youth communities are starting to come back. And they're creating the new thing that's unique to this time and responsive to their situation. And they ought to know how to play All My Friends and Neighbors, don't you think? Well, and by that, I mean, they ought to know that they come from a long lineage of fire starters and flame keepers that make Unitarian Universalism what it is.